Well, welcome to another season of Dream Car Garage, and what a season we've got lined up for you. We're going to be working on a 68 Shelby convertible KR that needs a ton of work, and we're going to do a really cool Corvette, a 57 579E big brake Fuelie airbox car. One of a handful built. This car raced from 1957 to 63, got parked in the garage. What a barn find.
Of course, when Peter says we're going to do it, of course he means he's not going to
the guys are going to do it.
The Custom Legendary Motor Car going to do it. You know, after about 8 or 9 seasons of this, you'd think that we were getting kind of fat and happy. He's happy. That would make me. So this season we're going to change things up a little. We've got so many interesting cars to look at, so many interesting situations to look at. If you've got used to the format for Dream Car Garage, you're going to see things change a little. We're going to stretch out a few segments, shorten up some other ones, normally the ones that he's on.
One of the first ones you're going to see today is a Fitzpatrick. Really neat car, but what's more important than the car, really, is the guy that built the car. What an interesting dude.
But
when we come back, we'll show Phil Lacy the car he started to build in the mid-60s and hasn't seen since.
yeah.
The Vintage Dream Car is brought to you by GoFastAuction.com. Get in on the action. Fast is our middle name.
Well, very few custom cars belong in the same sentence as the Y Job or the Phantom Corsair. The Fitzpatrick not only belongs in that sentence, it is arguably the most significant post-war custom ever built and probably launched the entire movement in the 50s. Well, like with any custom, it's all about being seen. It wasn't that much about performance. And that's exactly when Lacy designed this. It really didn't matter what the car was or the chassis was underneath. This one happened to be an early 40s Packard, a 1940 with a Super 8 in it. They did hot rod the motor a little bit back then. They got about 200 horsepower out of it. But as it went through a few owners in the early 50s and finally landed in Pennsylvania for about 40 years, that owner took out the original motor, put a small block Chevy in it, put in air conditioning, and for him it was about using the car and actually being seen in the car. I mean, can you picture this thing for 40 years running through the countryside in Pennsylvania, the guy using it as a driver? I mean, what a sexy looking car that you could jump in and drive. What's really cool as you drive this car is looking out over this great big long hood, 36 inches high at the hood, just over 48 inches at the roofline. I mean, this thing is a little bit shorter than a Corvette as far as height goes. But you've got a great running, driving car that's got the sexiest body that you've ever seen.
When I heard that Phil Lacy built this car with just one other gentleman in the evenings for 3 years, of course without a computer, 1947, without any draftsmen, his very first car that he ever built, and this is the end sculpture, I don't understand how he did it.
The interesting part of this whole story is not about the car itself, though. It's about Phil Lacy. He's the fellow that designed the car. He's the genius behind it all.
Well, when I got interested in automobiles, which was after World War II in California, and looking at the different cars, the first thing that came to mind was, why are these cars so big, so high? Why not chop them down? Why all that space under the hood? Why sitting on top of a chassis? It just didn't look right, so I wanted to try and lower it. Then I thought, what about the lines that we want to use, and how are we going to form them? We drew up several cars. This was only one of about 5 or 6 that I drew up. And this is the only one with those sweeping fenders on it. And if I knew how hard they were to make, I don't think I would have even shown that to anybody.
I don't understand how he did it. And other people that see the car, today's designers, they ask me, how did he get the symmetry from one side to the other, all by hand? And nobody can believe it, but it's true. And the car is there to represent that he did it.
But I liked it, and it had the cut-down doors, and the cut-down doors, people said, well, that's the Darren Packard. It was, but the main reason for it wasn't to copy Darren Packard. So when you're driving, your elbow can sit on the door, so it's just right to hold the wheel and drive that way. And it was designed and built in California, where you don't put your top up or your windows up very often. So it was just built strictly for being practical. And just about the time the car is finished, the Korean War was getting warmer, and I got a notice that said, report for active duty. And so I just had to leave the car alone with Fitzpatrick, who was a gentleman who had put up the money. And what he did with it after that was up to him. I was back on duty and hadn't been back on duty very long before they said, now we need you in Korea physically. And so with newly married, I had to leave my little girl and go back over to Korea for a year. And after I came back from Korea, they shipped me to Texas. And I never saw the car after I got married, after I got recalled active duty. Had no idea that the car still existed.
The history of the car, as far as I knew when I bought the car, was there wasn't any real history. It was just called the Fitzpatrick, and it was a gorgeous sculpture. It was about 2 years later when I received a call that said, somebody told me you could help me find the Fitzpatrick car. My reaction to that was, why do you want to know? He said, my father built the car and designed the car. And of course, at that point, I wanted to talk a whole lot.
Joe and I thought this was such a great story that we wanted to share this, you know, with as many people as could appreciate. It's kind of a unique, one-of-a-kind car. One of these stories we didn't want to just keep it in-house. We wanted to share it. And so he got a hold of Peter and set this up with Peter.
So here we are almost 60 years later, and what's going to happen is Joe's going to get an opportunity to reveal the car to Phil Lacy. He has never seen the car finished in almost 60 years.
There it is. It's all covered up, and
Wow.
the cover's going to come off, and you're going to get a chance to see it.
After 55 years. How about
55 years. Yeah, it's been a while. Here it
All
goes.
right, here
This
it
is
goes.
it. 55 years later.
that? Oh, my land.
55 years later.
Oh, look at that. My goodness sake. All these years.
Isn't that beautiful?
Thank you. I can remember it so well. Hand forming all those little tiny pieces and putting it together. 3 years of sweat, blood, and tears. Gee. All these years.
We finally meet after talking on the phone.
Yes,
Your dad's
Peter,
excited?
great deal. Amen. Oh, man. It's been a dream come true. We never thought we'd ever see the car again. You know, I was introduced to the car by pictures back in the 60s when I was a kid, and got interested in cars, you know, near the 70s or so, and never thought we'd see the car.
Front tender is made of roughly over 100 pieces. Weld each little piece and get it hot and hammer form it. Go on for 8 or 10 pieces and then go back and make sure we get the curve we wanted. But each one was formed by hand entirely, all the way back to the rear.
Well, that's a wrap on another episode of Dream Car Garage. We want to efficiently welcome GoFastAuction.com. Anything that goes fast, you can get it on the web.
Check this out. Hey, isn't this the coolest thing? It's a 1960s fighter seat. I bet you Tom's wife would love to have this around the dinner table, but then she'd have to worry about premature ejection with Tom and all.
My wife watches this show.
I said ejection.
Okay. My kids watch this show, too. It's not as far as you're concerned. See you next week on Dream Car Garage.